You guys can hear me okay in the back? Right? I put up this photo. I think I didn't have this, but when I realized that I was giving a session right after lunch, I hope you guys will do this to me. I hope my talk will be interesting enough to keep you, remembering from doing this. So without further ado, I think digital blah blah blah. The reason I picked this topic because digital has become so pervasive, right? I mean, I think everybody talks about digital everything. Do we even know anymore what we're trying to do with digital, right? So the three things I'm going to cover today, digital transformation, digital innovation, and digital disruption. And by the end of this talk, I think you will find that only a few of them have to be digital. Okay? So my name is Jakkris Tangkuampien. I'm currently the digital innovation lead at Roche Pharmaceutical in Thailand. Without further ado, I base a lot of this talk and information on these three books. The first one is The Second Machine Age by Eric Bernofson. He writes a lot of books about how digital and the machine have changed the way that we live in the world today. The second one is Innovator's Dilemma. I would go as far as to say, if you call yourself an innovator, you have to read this book. He was the guy who coined the term disruption. He passed away earlier this year, so that's a little unfortunate for us, but his work still stays with us. The last two books is a series of books, Business Model Innovation. Some of you are probably familiar with this book. He's got about 4 things going on here: business model innovation, business model canvas, value proposition design, and ethics of the order. So if you're interested in any of these things, just go and find out more. Okay, so digital. If you go back to the very first time we talked about digital, I don't know how, I wasn't old enough when this happened, But without going into too much details, digital brings to us 2 things. Instantaneous data transmission. Right? We have access to data everywhere, anywhere in the world. And resiliency. Data stays the way it is. It doesn't get broken down. Whatever you transmit gets reconstructed in the same way across the world. And that's basically what the 2 key things that digital brings to us. I did a quick Google search, what it means to be digital transformation, right? This is on Wikipedia. So if you don't agree with this, by all means, go out there, change it, right? Well, going to the 2 things, I just want to break this down into 2 areas, right? That's one thing. The top one says replacing and replacing. You're replacing manual processes with digital. You're replacing existing digital with faster digital, right? And the bottom one is about new things, new type of things. So basically, the top part, we're talking about known stuff, known processes, known business processes, things that you've always done, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. You just make it faster, better, right, cheaper. And the second one is more new and innovative. So looking at this, you divide this up into the top and bottom, the known and unknown space, right? Before I go further, just want to lay the ground as well. Digital wasn't the first technology changing, it wasn't the first world-changing technology. Before this, we had the steam engine, changed the way that we manufacture things, right? And after that, you had electricity, right? And now you have digital. This is some of the work, a lot of work that Eric Bernofson does. And he made 2 observations. One is that every time these technologies come, it changes the way that the world works, right? The second observation he makes is there's a time between just replacing whatever it is you're doing with the technology and taking advantage of what the technology can allow you to reorient your business process. So if you think back to the chart that I had earlier, the first phase is just doing, replacing whatever it is you're doing, just replacing it with the new technology. And then the next phase is process re-engineering, business model design. With that in mind, the question is, should everything be digital? This is a digital experience. And to be fair, it could work in a different country, in a different culture, in a different context. Or maybe, if you pay 10 baht a month, unlimited rights, maybe people will actually wait for it, right? So the point is, technology itself doesn't always give you the thing, what you need, the innovation, right? So what you actually have to do when you talk about digital transformation is not just digital transformation. You have to have a digital transformation strategy. I didn't say this was a quote. A strategy is about making choices. So never say no. Don't have one. So if you are implementing everything, that's not a strategy. It means you're not being selective. And the reason I like this quote is because, like chess in the background there, you got to make choices, right? Sometimes you play chess, you got to decide that you're going to sacrifice something to gain something. You can't just, no, I won't do everything. Right? So in terms of strategy, there's a word that we all know, processes, things that we know always make money for us, things that we know is going to be successful. I call this a known space, in the world there. But there's also another area, the unknown space, that we don't always explore. Looking at the slide, I'm going to take some time because I know it might take a little bit of time for this to sink in to kind of understand, because it took me a first time I kind of put this together, I was like, wow, are people going to understand this? So I think you've seen similar quadrants. I just kind of put this together myself in terms of knowledge and uncertainty. So if you look at it, if something is at the bottom, this is increasing knowledge. We know how to do it really well. This one is increasing uncertainty, right? So just to map that in, if you have known things, like you know how to do it, you've always done it, you know it successfully, there is a lot of knowledge here, very little uncertainty. With me so far? Okay? The unknown is, very easy. The next two are the most interesting because I struggle a little bit to kind of explain what it means even to myself before I come up here to you guys. But the known unknown, you're like, what do you mean it's a known unknown? This is something that perhaps you know that it's going to happen. So you run a project, you know you're going to deal with this company, this state, this entity. You know that's going to be delayed, but you just don't know how much. Right? You know there's going to be a problem, so you can anticipate. Yeah, I need to, the last time we worked with this company, they took 9 months instead of 6. So this time when you go, you got to have some buffer time, right? Unknown is also interesting because what do you mean is something that I know, but I don't really know that I know about it. It's quite interesting. So I call this something like you have knowledge of it, but you didn't think it mattered. Something like, I wish I had known this. Something like, oh, somebody has done this thing. I'm like, oh, yeah, I could have done that. Right? So these two are going to come back again, the unknown, known, and known unknown. So the last thing I just want to share with you guys before we go into the stories, I've got lots of stories to tell you, is this thing called the innovation portfolio management. So there are actually not just one type of innovation. A lot of people just talk innovation. If you do a lot of reading, a lot of, I think there should be a little QR code coming up soon. Classify innovation into 3 types. The first one is core innovation, like doing whatever you're doing, faster, better, quicker, faster, cheaper. Efficiency focus. If you go back to what I talked about earlier, focusing on known stuff, just making it faster. Adjacent is trying something that others have done, but you haven't. So maybe if you were Microsoft, Google has done it, you can kind of, learn from them and learn how to do it. Maybe just borrow the expertise and then find out how to do it. Disruptive, no one has done it before. And we'll come back to this again and again. There's also another classification called sustaining innovation, and it basically includes, primarily core innovation. That means it will keep you alive. It will keep you alive, if you can do efficient, faster, you're going to save money, it's going to keep you alive. But what it won't do, it won't grow you, because most of the time, core innovation makes no difference to your customer. It makes a lot of difference to you internally as an organization, but the customer doesn't actually feel it. If you think about it, right? If you're more efficient, if you eliminate 90% of your processes internally, unless you can make your service cheaper for the customer, right? The last thing is with each of this, that's increasing uncertainty. If you're doing a lot of things that you've done before, there's very little uncertainty, right? You've done it, decade, 10,000 times before. And then disruptive is a lot of risk, right? Okay, so now just to lay off everything that I've talked about. Core innovation is basically known stuff. You're just putting it, mapping it in a known space. That's where core innovation sits. Adjacent is somewhere in between, and then disruptive is in between these two areas. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what they mean. To summarize, basically, if you remember what we talked about digital, right? It's like repeating and replicating, doing what it is that you're doing faster. This side is kind of digital ready. The process, you just digitize it. There's no need to do a lot of discovery. But on the right side, there's a lot of, you're not sure how to do it. You're not quite sure if it's going to work or not. You're not quite sure how things are going to go. So there's a lot more you need to do, you need to explore before you can digitize. With that in mind, I'm not going to go too much further into the transformation. Just going to summarize that, for a strategy, you basically have a very simplified strategy. And you talk about these things on the left-hand side, that's kind of like ready to digitize, and on the right, that is, you need to focus on exploration first. So I think there are two things left. We talk about transformation, innovation, and disruption. You guys are familiar with what innovation is and what disruptive innovation is. I'm going to give you some examples because it can be quite challenging. Netflix is an example that I use because typically it has all characteristics of what an innovative company should be. So if you talk about innovation, you talk about Netflix, core innovation for them is this suggestion system. If you like this movie, you're probably going to like that movie, right? They need to do this whether or not they're doing DVD, streaming, or anything. You still need this, right? Adjacent for them is making movies, right? Because Netflix originally didn't do movies. Sony Pictures have done it, Columbia Pictures have done it. For them, it was something new. So it was a risk for them, but they could find out they can poach people, basically, get people from other companies to do it for them. And disruptive was always streaming. Okay? So to understand, I think adjacent is kind of in between, so I'm going to focus on core innovation and disruptive innovation. So core innovation, on its surface, I think looks very simple. You would think that you've done processes for a long time. All you got to do is just digitize the whole thing and all is good, right? There are many challenges, and I'll tell you just two. That's an obstacle. It's a danger, right? For that, I will tell you a story, and I think if you're in the UX field, this is probably a good story as well. So a while back in August 1986, there was a gentleman named Nigel Newton. He was given 50 pages of manuscript. He's a publisher, so he was given 50 pages of manuscript, and he has to decide whether or not he's going to go ahead and publish this book. He knows that this book has been rejected by 8 other companies, 8 other publishers. He wasn't too interested, so he gave his, this manuscript to his daughter. She reads it, she comes back to him and she said, "Daddy, this is the best thing I've ever read." And she was like, "Where's the rest of this? You give me 50 pages. And Nigel wasn't so, he wasn't so interested, until his daughter kept asking him, where's the rest, where's the rest? So he managed to get the rest, and then I think based on that, he decided to publish 500 copies of this book. Of course, you all know this book, right? The reason I share this is because we all think we are masters. We all think we're experts. We all think we've been in the business for a long time, and we forget who the actual end users are. I think earlier today, the UX folks, they talk about listening to your customers. So my challenge to everyone here is, are we listening to our customers? Are we actually interacting with our customers? Or are we actually interacting with our managers, SMEs, experts, product owners? Because they are not your customers. They can give you a pretty good idea, but at the end, you still gotta interact with your real customers. Sounds pretty bleak, right? That's good news coming. It's good news coming. So digital, as I said, give you very fast access, very resilient data. Anyone practically have access to digital. We all got our cell phones, we all got our laptops, right? We all got our iPads. There's access for everybody. What it allows you to do is amplify your experience really quickly across the world, right? You've got a really great experience. You replicate it to Europe, to America, to other countries, and yeah, there you have it, right? Another thing is, it amplifies the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? If you've got a really good process, you amplify it, everybody feels it. If you have a bad process, people will also feel it. So at this point, you guys are thinking, oh yeah, this is great, man. You're telling me that digital is easy, digital is cheap, and I've got really good process, so I will just replicate everything, right? And it's good. So, not so much. This is, say, if I'm a translator, I translate English to Thai very well. Not so good, so maybe I'm this guy here, Mr. C. My skill is I make some errors and I get paid $450 a week, right? So maybe I put Ying over there. She's really good. She gets perfect score, very good phrases, and she gets paid $500 a week. So in this kind of market, what you have is pretty much a normal distribution. You have Kun Ying over there, not so many of her, some people are really, really good at what they do. She gets paid a lot of money, right? And then there's a scale, maybe there's some guy who's not as good as her, there's some guy over there, maybe me, who's kind of borderline there. I don't get paid so much, right? But at the end, you have a normal distribution of people. You have people in the middle, average people get paid average pay rate, and the top people get paid really well, right? Now I'm going to give you the bad news. The bad news is, welcome to the digital age. Why is that a bad news? So if you think about it, Kun Ying over here, if she can come up with a bot that can do what she does, an AI bot that can translate what she does, she's the best in her job, right? She can replicate that. She doesn't have to charge $500, right? She's got, bots doing what she does now. She's got four people now, four bots doing it. She can charge $250. Here's the thing about digital, right? Once you put something in the digital world, nobody cares about the second, the third, or the fourth best. If you have a choice, do you choose the second best app or the third best app? You don't, right? So this is no longer true. What ends up happening is this kind of distribution instead. So here's Kun Ying over here. She's the best. She's replicated all her capabilities now digitally. That's me, still there, the bottom guy, right? The rest of the crew, who was previously here, are now here with me. And guess what? The pay is now with her because she now can replicate whatever it is she's doing. Everybody in the world has access to it. Everybody in the world can do the same thing. It's what we call winner takes all. If you're interested, read more about this. Bernofson writes a lot of articles on this. So basically, digital is great, but only if you're the best. Because people don't choose second, third, fourth best. Do you remember when Harry Potter came out and said, oh, it's #1 bestseller? What was number 2? Number 3? Right? So now you're thinking, yeah, so my work is really complex. It's not as simple as translating. So who's at risk here? This is a photo of Eric Bernofson himself. So he writes a lot of books, does a lot of study. And he shows this photo because he said, a couple of years ago, he said that self-driving car was too complex. This was his photo taking his first drive on Google Drive with an automatic navigation. So nobody is safe. Everything I've talked about is replicating existing processes, basically co-innovation. So my message to everyone here is co-innovation is not enough, unless you're number 1. There's light at the end of the tunnel, this thing called disruptive innovation. And you're going to see this pattern coming up a lot. What it gives you, and I think there's a couple of startups, maybe VCs here, what it gives you is a potential of high return. So with this chart, you look at this, it basically says on the axis here, how much return you're going to get, and how many percentage of companies actually get this. So if you look at this, 0.4%, 4 in 1,000 startups hit the home run 50 times return of investment. 4 in 1,000. 7 out of 10 almost get 0 to 1% return. And somewhere in between here, I would be happy with this actually. 5, 20 times to 50 times return on investment, about 10%. So the message here is, depending on what you look at, either 4 in 1,000, or you listen to Peter Thiel, 0 to 1 in 10, you could be relatively successful. You could be relatively successful, but 70% of the time, you're going to fail. But if you're successful, there's a lot of disruption that you can do. I'm going to tell you 2 stories, and I hope you'll pick up some pattern out of this. In 1940s, there was a company called Bucyrus. Their specialty was earth-moving equipment. They did a lot of digging earth, a lot of mining to excavate a lot of land. So they built huge machines, with pulleys and systems. And one of their top-of-the-line model was a huge machine that could dig up 4 cubic meters, which is, I think, maybe a quarter of this room, 4 cubic meters of earth. Really huge. And their main customer were the mining corporations, the excavation company, the people who actually blow up a lot of mine and needed to remove a lot of earth. Along comes this smaller companies. They use this newer technology called hydraulics. They could only scoop up 0.8 cubic meters every single time. Now, these mining companies didn't care. They say, oh, it's too small for us. We don't care about it. But who did? The people who were building homes. Smaller homes, people, they just needed to dig up a little bit of land. They didn't need to, dig up a huge earth. And that market grew. And one of these smaller companies, Caterpillar, Bucyrus disappeared in 2011. That time they were part of Caterpillar. They were actually bought over by Caterpillar. 1980, company called Ministripe. They were focused on building hard disks, for high performance computing, for basically a lot of large corporations as well. And at that time, I know it's hard to believe, but 40 to 60 megabyte was the highest capacity, and their customers were the NASA Research Institute, Academic Institute, University. Along come a small group company building hard disks using a new technology, 5 to 10 megabyte. Of course, the university, NASA, didn't care about this, right? Did care, was a home consumer. We don't need that big at that time, right? We're happy with 5 to 10. Of course, that market grew. Those companies will seek it. You see a pattern in disruption. 40 to 60 megabyte existing technology have its own trajectory. Newer technology appears, can't do really as well as the existing technology, but eventually went over to take over. Now you're going to hate me for it, because I want to tell you, to disrupt, don't listen to your current customer. And this is why Christensen's book is called Innovator's Dilemma. Do you listen to your existing customers who's always making you money? Or do you find a new market in which you can disrupt? And this is why disruption is so difficult for corporate. Because what do corporates do? He listens to all customers. So pattern for disruption. Don't listen to your current customer. You will look stupid. right? You would look like, what the hell are you doing? If you think about it, right? When Seagate came, 5 to 10 megabytes. And you think about the existing company, you're thinking, what the hell is this? You know, we were talking about 40, 60 megabytes. What? 5, 10? Netflix, laughed out of the meeting room by Blockbuster, right? This one is also important. Be prepared to cannibalize yourself. Be prepared to destroy your own business. If you look at Netflix, what did they have to do? Do we continue with the video DVDs, or do we invest in streaming? How many times have we had business conversations with them, can't do it because it's going to eat into our product? That's what Netflix had to do. Most recent disruption focus on business model innovation. And we're going to go back to this chart now. Essentially, when the only way to come up with unknown is research and development. That's the only way you can come up with new technology, new things like that, you know, quantum computing and things like that, right? But the unknown known is how do you figure out a new way of making money, of generating revenue. That's the business model. I'm going to ask you again, how many of you have Netflix at home? Yeah? Okay. Whoa. How many of you watch Netflix because it's got super cool technology, 4K HDR and Dolby Atmos? Come on, man, it's really cool, right? Yeah, there are a few. I love it. How many of you watch it because you can pay anything as much as you want and you pay the same monthly? How many of you do that because of that? That's a business model, right? It's got nothing to do with 4K HDR. Apple was talking about 4K. So with this, I'm just going to map and kind of add everything together. I kind of put this together. I think this is probably the first time I've shown it in public. I think some of the folks who know me, I tested it with them a little bit. So you basically have whole innovation umbrella. You have efficiency, exploitation focus, you know, core innovation, and you have exploration, basically in 2 areas, business model innovation and R&D driven. The next question you're going to ask is, so, you know, how do you find the balance? How do you find, where should I focus my energy, core and, you know, adjacent and disruption? You told me so many things, right? HBR does a study and, you know, they find that different companies have different ratios. So 80%, 18, 2 for like consumer manufacturing driven. Tech company, you know, 45, 40, 15. And you're going to ask, yeah, what's the right ratio? And I'm going to tell you it doesn't matter. And the reason I say this, I don't care how much you got it. Just have a team to do disruptive innovation. Because what normally happens in a corporation is when the times come tough, when it comes, hey Zach, you're an innovation team, you're not generating any revenue, right? Stop what you're doing, come and help us with the efficiency stuff. So I don't care how many, I don't care if it's 1 person, 2 person, 0.5%, 1%, just have a dedicated disruptive innovation team as a start. Because you're gonna, if I tell you 10, you're gonna say, oh, give me 10, and you can't do it. I can tell you that right now. So the decision is, what is your priority? Do you want to survive or to survive and grow? To survive, you're just scattering, you know, doing efficiency stuff, or do you want to find new revenue stream? To grow, you need to experiment and you need to design with agility. And the reason I say that is because, you know, you're going to have a lot of unknown, right? If you go and think, I want to do something new, but I kind of know already what I want to do. I don't need to experiment. That's kind of a contradictory thing, right? Agility is no longer an option today. You may think that I'm doing core, everything is predictable, right? If you think about the most predictable, the most hierarchical, the most process-oriented organization, you might think of the Army. And I think some of you probably know where I'm going with this. The US Army has had to adopt something, they didn't call it Agile, but they call it team of teams. You know, because they found that in the field, if you optimize for efficiency, it relies on the fact that you can predict what's going to happen. You know, if you want to make the process faster, you basically got to have a very well outlined processes. I'm just going to skip the next slide. The reason I say this is because this chart that I just showed you, where there is some certainty here, it's no longer true. Whatever it is you're thinking is predictable, there's a lot more happening, and even your core innovation is no longer predictable. With that in mind, you have to do a lot of experiment. Even if you think you know what you're doing, throw it out, see what the reaction is, see what you can learn from it. And typical, when you have a really large organization, what we call experiment, maybe we pilot things, maybe we try 3 different things, and then we select one, and we say, hey, that's my MVP, right? And the problem with this approach is once you find the winner, you scale it, and you hope for a green signal, but it becomes great, it doesn't work. Nobody is using your product, all the customers are complaining, right? And the reason for that is you spend a lot of money already. Think about it, if you spend 2 months piloting something, you fall in love with the product, your boss fall in love with the product because you told him you spent 10 million baht on it already, right? And there's no going back. So the only thing you have to do is scale it back. Even in putting this deck together, I did my MVP. This is probably my 7th time running this, because I have my own expectation. When I talk to the audience, you guys can have different expectations. So test, experiment, design, discovery, really quickly, really fast. And you have to find a balance between the 3. Like I said, if you don't have any transformational or actually say disruptive innovation team, you should have it. Find your non-customers. Last one. A lot of time people think that it have to be big changes. So I'm going to show you this company, and you guys can play along with me, guess what company it is if you know. So 2010, there's this one, revenue pretty good. They were making like $150 million. Pretty good, right? Start to decline a little bit. Still okay. They have 5 business lines. One, the yellow one is automobile. One is aviation, marine, outdoor, and fitness. Any guesses? I'm sorry? Any company? Merchant? Virgin? Oh! No! Give you another hint.
Garmin.
Yes! Garmin. I took this from their investors report. I don't have a lot of information on it, I just make a nice observation. If you were Garmin, your best customers back then were automobile. I would love to have been the fly in the room to listen to the guy who pitched to the executive and say, hey, you know what? We got to start focusing now on fitness and on outdoor. It's a completely different customer, right? But it still has that core agility and skills, which is GPS. They did test, and then that grew. Can you imagine if they didn't do that? So at the end, we had digital transformation, innovation, disruption. The only thing that has to be digital is transformation. The only reason I share with you the example for innovation and disruption, it does not have to be digital. At the end, people matter the most. And I think when you're talking about your organization, how do you build a mindset that that people are able to kind of experiment freely. And each organization is going to have different strengths. Each organization is going to have a very unique position. And you can't replicate what the other company has been trying to do. I hear a lot of things like, yeah, we've got to do the Spotify model. You can't lift and drop. You've got to find your strength. And I've just joined Roche 4 months ago, and there are 2 things about Roche that I noticed immediately upon joining, which I found really interesting. One is Roche has just undergone, under 2 years now, agile transformation. And I think that sticks out for me was it was business-led, which is unique, at least from my standpoint, because I'm more familiar with agile transformation, which is IT-led. And we end up trying to drag our business along, saying, how much we go agile with us, right? That's not really good. And you got to listen. They listen to a lot of people. The last thought I would ask you to consider, I think you all know what this is, right? If you had this infinity gauntlet, and you snap your finger, and everything in your company is digitized, and your competitor also has the same, right? They got the same money. What are you offering to the customer that's differentiating? What is going to bring your customer to you if everything is digital? With that, I hope to hear more of the silly answer, silly solution, and different, stupid-looking solution from everyone here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the topic. Okay, and right now you know that what is a blah 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 blah, right? Yeah. The first thing is disruption and innovation and transformation. Okay, and give the word for Kun Jakkris. Okay, scan the QR code and give the word to Kun Jakkris, please. Okay, and we have the special gift for you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the photo.
If anybody has difficulty using the QR on the screen, so you can use on the paper, on the side, on the wall as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yes, that is